Welcome to Curiosity, Not Judgment with Birga.
Hey, Gary.
So we are rapidly approaching the end of the year, and one of the things that many people are considering are year-end gifts. And so I thought this was a curious topic that we might be able to explore today, talking about how we give, to whom we give, what are your thoughts around giving, and asking some of those curious questions to see if you really know where your money's going as you give.
And, one of the reasons why people give at the end of the year, of course, is that, you get a tax deduction for many 501(c)(3)s. Those of you who have looked into charitable organizations, you may or may not know that some charitable organizations qualify for a tax credit and some do not. Many kind of, not every single charitable organization gets you a tax break.
Right.
But many do. And if you're giving donations to Big Brothers Big Sisters, to Goodwill, to the clothing bank, at the church, whatever you're doing, you can do both in-kind and cash contributions, of course. And if you do it before December 31st, then it counts for this year's taxes that you'll do in the spring.
Absolutely. I think that used to be much more of a draw in years past. Every year tax regulations get changed. And I think, I don't know, I'm guessing 5 years ago, something like that, there was some threshold changes. And so taking the standard deduction for many people would eliminate the perk, so to speak, of the tax write-off. But certainly don't take my advice. I am not a tax attorney, nor do I work for the IRS or any such organization. So certainly go and do your homework and get educated decisions on that matter. But it is something to think about as you are making decisions. Do you want to give a big lump sum at the end of the year, assuming that it's going to be to your advantage? Just make sure you know that it's going to actually work out in your favor if that's the motivation for giving.
So, and what Birga's talking about is the itemized deduction versus the lump sum. And so there are thresholds, and so you should work it out with your tax advisor. But in general, I think we as a society are, generally very generous, and we like to give to things and to causes that mean something to us. And, and I'm very aware of folks who sit down once a quarter and look at all the things that they're giving to and decide, whether or not that's still a good thing to give to or not, because there's many times you can sign up like a monthly payment, and then there's so many people asking for money. Sometimes you want to switch things around, change your portfolio. Not everyone can just continue to give and give and give to whoever asks, and never think about not giving to somebody else. But anyway, the questions are: who do you give to? How do you know that the money you're giving is going to the intended mission and or people and or things? And do you care?
Right. This is actually a very significant topic that I've spent a lot of time investigating. I come out of the nonprofit world, was employed by a series of nonprofits, and this is something that has been near and dear to my heart for many, many years. And I actually had a research project, I don't know, along the lines of 2018, 2019, somewhere in there, trying to develop a tool that really assessed the health of a nonprofit organization in order to give it to potential donors that are looking to investigate charitable enterprises to make a determination if that was a good use of their money. And so I know that there are some guidelines that are out there, and certainly the themes and the kind of markers and measures that I came up with are not the end-all be-all, but they were some things that in that season of my investigation I thought were really important. And I can kind of rattle some of those off if you're curious about that and want to use some of those to think about if you're exploring a new organization that you want to get involved with financially. And it really had to do with a few key concepts. So first off, there's a lot of language that you'll see about money going to overhead costs versus money going to programs and to the people that an organization is serving. That needs a deeper dive. What is on the surface does not always tell the full story, for good or for bad. So, for example...
I'm shocked.
Well, yeah, I know you are. You might see an organization that says 85% of all donations go to programs. And so you think to yourself, okay, great, only 15% is going to overhead. That might be great. If that organization, though, pays its executive director and key staff members very poorly in order to keep that 85% threshold, it's not as great as one might think, because that tends to lead towards burnout of key staff, high degree of turnover of staff, which really jeopardizes the health of the organization.
And one could argue the quality of the staff.
Yes. Yes.
And the quality of the staff, as we've seen recently, heads of organizations, and you and I have talked about organizations, and you know, every organization that's run by humans is flawed to some degree, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you have quality people, one might argue that the programs actually get run better and are more effective than if you have poor leadership. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, it's not too soon, FTX, the head of the organization makes a big deal of how effective, in this case, investments are. And I think that while most people who go into nonprofits are mission oriented and don't need to make, $1 million a year, still having somebody in there that has a wage that allows them to think about the organization as opposed to their own monthly budget is probably a good thing.
Absolutely. And just as a point of reference, most organizations that are depending on grants for sustaining their overall yearly budget, by and large, the vast majority of grants do not allow that money to go towards operational expenses. So, let's say somebody gets a $50,000 grant from the United Way. None of that money, depending on how the language is written, none of that money can go towards operational expenses. And so that's not paying for somebody's salary. Therefore, a salary needs to be derived through other means, aka fundraising.
Right.
So it is complicated, I guess is what I'm getting at. It's not as straightforward as you might think. And just because an organization has a very small overhead percentage, while that sounds good initially, and you might make a quick judgment to say, great, they're in great health, it deserves a little bit of a deeper look. And so if you're getting involved with a local organization, that is something that you can be intentional about, is calling and making an appointment to talk to the executive director, talking to the chair of the board, if it's somebody within your area, and say, hey, talk to me a little bit about the longevity of, the person in charge. How long have they been there? Have they been there, for 9 months? Have they been there for 9 years? You can kind of gauge the health of an organization, again, by how the turnover is, if they are having a hard time maintaining staff. There's some red flags that are potentially there if it's constantly new people working and constantly new people in leadership. And so just again, a word of caution, not to make that a hard and fast judgment, but just go in curious, ask some questions, and ask some questions that matter to you about the health of the organization.
Now, all this has a risk reward. I mean,
Yes.
you need to ask yourself the first question, is it worth my time to go and do these investigations? Very sound advice. But if you're only giving, $50 a month or $50 a year to something,
Sure.
maybe it's not worth your time to go and do that level of investigation. But I would say that if you're giving a significant amount of money and you're intending that money is used for good purposes, then it's probably good to hold the folks accountable who are receiving that money from you. And in general, one would hope that there are things in place that hold people accountable in general. Now, some of that has to do with the longevity of the organization, et cetera. But it does have to do with how much time you're willing to spend. Now, the best way, of course, to do this is to go volunteer your own time.
Yeah.
And serve on the board and or be involved. I was a Big Brother in the Big Brothers Big Sister program for a while, and I got involved with the board. And so, I knew where the money was going. I knew what was coming in. I knew what was going on, and I saw the direct result of the efficacy of the program
Sure.
with children, of which mine were one. And so that that's the best way, is to get involved with the organization. There's the old adage of it's not just money that we have, it's time, talent, and treasure.
Yep.
Treasure being the money. And so, donating your time and talent is also a very good way to become involved and have your own money follow that that involvement with the organization.
Absolutely. And if we're talking about a national organization, maybe you're not giving to a specific local chapter, but a larger organization you're giving at the national level, there are some kind of watchdog organizations that try to regulate and give guidance to people as they give. So there's a organization or a business, I guess, called GuideStar that you can look up a particular nonprofit. Depending on whether or not you're a member of GuideStar, you can also see a 990 tax filing for an organization. But it should, if the organization keeps their information up to date, give you a list of the executives of the organization as well as the board of directors. And so certainly there should be contact information there. If there's information that you need about something that you are curious about at the national level, that should have some contact information for you there. And again, depending on how much you care and your level of giving, you may want to dig deeper. Totally up to you. Just wanted to present that as an option out there with giving.
But how many of us really think overall about our generosity? And do we have a plan? A lot of people say, well, if people, plan their retirement as much as they put into planning their vacations, they'd retire better. Well, I think that's the same way with generosity.
Yeah.
Sitting down with your partner and saying, hey, what do we want to do? There was a season where we were tipping the person when we turned in our rental car $20 because we figured out nobody ever tips those people, and just little things like that, and just having kind of doing that next level of thinking, right? When you see somebody on the corner, do you give them $1? Do you give them $5? Do you give them a power bar that you keep in your car for that reason? It doesn't take more than about 20 minutes to think through these things.
Yeah.
People that come to your door selling magazine subscriptions for a charitable organization or a youth organization or something, they may tell a great story. They may be totally not good, right? But we don't know.
Right.
And, these folks are supposed to get certified to go door to door, but does that really work? You can just, show a piece of paper. Who knows? Maybe it's better, instead of signing up for a magazine subscription, to say, you know what, everybody who comes to our door, we're just going to hand them $20 and say, do what you want. And I'm not recommending these things. I'm just saying, if you give some thought to it, it makes it a lot easier with a little forethought than when you're in the situation trying to think about what to do. That's another thing that my wife and I always do before we go to a gala with a silent auction. We say, okay, look, we want to give about this much, so here's how much we're going to spend on the silent auction. Here's how much here's our limit, right?
Right.
Or do we want to? So anyway, just a little bit of forethought goes a long way. And so if you think about an overall budget for giving, and then you start thinking, okay, of that budget, how much do we want to go to homeless? How much do we want to go to drug prevention? How much do we want to go to the church? How much do we want to go to Big Brothers Big Sisters? It's not really, it doesn't take that much effort or planning to ask a few pertinent questions.
Absolutely. And, this is, again, going to be between you and your partner, you and your, value system and moral beliefs. Does giving to people versus giving to tried and true organizations carry the same weight? I'm of the opinion now, and I think my mind has shifted over the years, that I see people in need, in genuine need, and I'm okay giving to them, even if they're not under the umbrella of an organization. And so, we have a number of people in our lives that we know have just been through some really hard financial times, and I don't have a problem providing some ongoing financial support. They're not, being cared for by an organization where I can get a tax credit for it, but to me, that's okay. But these are the type of conversations that you have to have. And again, going back to the heart of the matter, why are you donating? What is your personal or family or business motivation behind giving? Because of course, organizations, businesses can be charitable as well. and just to ask some of those questions. You have to be curious about what's going on in your own space so that you can give wisely when the time comes to give.
By the way, just because you brought it up about businesses, you should also check with your own company. Many companies match donations to charitable organizations, and your organization may also have a United Way campaign that they do once a year, and so, putting some forethought into that also is a good idea. But back to your organizations, not versus, but individuals. I made the comment just today to someone that, my last 3 checks I've written, although it's Venmo these days, have been to individuals who are doing really good work in the community. And you know what? It's like, hey, if you want to do this with your work, and I'll give you an example. There's an individual who runs a bike program down at UNM. And when students arrive and they don't have transportation, you can go and get a bike from these folks. And so what they do is they take bike donations. They have these folks who just fix them up and volunteer their time, and then they give them to students for the semester and say, hey, would you please bring it back when you're done? And I'm sure some don't come back, but that's
Sure.
not the point.
Certainly.
And you know what? I just think that's a fantastic thing to do. And the guy who runs it, him and his wife, I think do great work in the community.
Yeah.
And so when in my quiet time, they came upon my thinking, I just, Venmoed them some money. I didn't do it to the organization.
Right.
I did it to them. They can use it on the organization if they want, but I just think I wanted to honor the work that they, as individuals, are doing in the community.
Yeah.
And then we're not saying that this is the right way to do it or the wrong way to do it, just giving different options and different thinking about your generosity.
Absolutely. To be curious, right? I had a good conversation with a friend yesterday who comes out of the faith-based nonprofit sector, as do I, and we were just comparing notes about the traditional way of thinking about compensating leaders in that space. And he said something that he was trying to be a little tongue-in-cheek, but unfortunately he hit it right on the head. He said, yeah, the prevailing thought among, he used the Christian nonprofit as an example, is that leaders should be paid $15 an hour. And he was joking, but also not joking,
Right.
because I cannot tell you how many jobs I've been in where that was the starting salary, was $15 an hour.
Yeah.
And so to your point, the organization may not be able to compensate appropriately the leader. And so if you
choose not to.
or choose not to, if you as an individual see the hard work that somebody's doing and want to give a gift to them specifically, knowing that of course the organization could use the funds, but you want to support the person, absolutely. I love that idea, and I'm glad you mentioned it as an option.
Now, the consequence, of course, is I don't get to take that off my taxes.
Certainly.
So that's not my goal
Right.
in that case.
Yeah.
So again, these are, and we're making it maybe sound a little bit more complicated than it is. I think the major thing is just to sit down and ask yourself the question, what do I want to do about, this is the end of the year. Let's think about it. You can do a couple of gifts at the end of this year for sure, but think about it for the next year, right? We're sitting in 2022. In 2023, what do we want to do as far as generosity? What percentage of our income do we want to do? What organizations or people do we want to support? And what else do we want to do as far as not just money, but time and talent, right? I mean, I tell you that every nonprofit needs a good accountant.
No question.
Some more than others. And if you just happen to be an accountant, I can tell you that volunteering an hour a week
Oh, yes.
would do a big deal, even if they've got an accountant or someone who's volunteering, just working alongside someone, putting in the proper checks and balances, just making sure the money's actually going where it should go, would be a huge boon in that way. If you have leadership capabilities, if you have ways for people to understand each other and work together better, if you can offer, even just a helping hand in filling boxes, so to speak, right? I think of Roadrunner Food Pantry, who just, they'll take you as any volunteer who would just come in and just load up boxes,
Yep.
shift things from bulk bags to small bags.
Yep.
That's a big deal, and they need a lot of help in that area. And so I consider giving your time and your talent also to these organizations. And think about Also, everybody has things that are on their heart. And, you and I talk about this a lot, but, when you're going around in certain circles and you're having your Christmas party this year and you're thinking about, and somebody says something and you think, you know what, I need to jump in this conversation. That's a good clue of something that you would enjoy
Right.
contributing to, time, talent, or treasure.
Yep.
And I think that part of the volunteering or generosity has to do with following your passion,
Yes.
just like we should do in life in general with career, work, family, etc. But that's a way to do it that gets you more involved.
Yep. I want to jump back to something you said a few minutes ago because it's like screaming in my head right now. Professionals, let me talk to you for a minute. I will tell you some key categories. Even if you're cash strapped and you can't give financially, but you have the skill set, here is some of the most critical areas that I'm aware of that local nonprofits probably could use your help. If you understand CRMs, if you know Salesforce, if you know Apricot, if you know some of the prevailing customer service software, oh my goodness, do nonprofits need your help. If you are somebody that knows how to do mail merging, taking a list of email addresses out of an Excel spreadsheet and getting them into year-end tax forms, nonprofits can use your help. If you are somebody with organizational skills and you have local nonprofits that have thrift stores, they need your help. There is so much opportunity to give from your skill set or even from your passion. You're somebody that likes to do interior design. You're somebody that likes to keep things neat and tidy. They absolutely can use your help. So don't dismiss some of those things that you have been, learning in your profession or just even in your personal journey. Don't dismiss those as non-usable skills. In the nonprofit world, absolutely they're transferable.
Well, and I'll pile on and give you a bonus.
Okay.
A couple of my major career changes in life happened because I met somebody in a volunteer situation.
Yep.
I met somebody serving the homeless at noonday that totally, I started a company based on of meeting a few folks from Sandia based on somebody I was working alongside with in a soup kitchen. There you'll meet the most fascinating people. So what a great observation, Birga, and that is, even if you don't have money or even if you do, volunteering your time, you will meet some really good people. And if you're not happy or fulfilled or challenged in your current position, this is a great way to figure out what's out there and work alongside other people who are like-minded. They're passionate and they will go out and do something. Those are some of the best people in the world that are out there and understand and know where the good positions and careers are.
And I will go even one step further. If you have a professional skill or just gifting that you feel like you could contribute to a nonprofit, but it really has to be done during work hours and you're a regular kind of 9 to 5 employee, have the conversation with your supervisor or with your HR to say, would this company be willing to lend me 4 hours a week or 2 hours a week, keeping me on the clock to a local nonprofit as their charitable gift? Because a business can potentially get a write-off for an in-kind donation of services. And so there are lots of opportunities to make your boss look good, to make your company look good, and for you to get involved in using your talents to help somebody locally.
And small businesses can for sure do that easily. Large businesses often have programs that you can do 4 hours a month or something, and do it on work hours. It's funny, the medium businesses are the ones that generally have the hardest time with this because they don't know how to fit it into their HR world. But it's absolutely worth the question. Be curious.
Absolutely. So time, talent, and treasure. Are you being curious about what you have to give and how you give? As always, we'd love to hear your feedback. Feel free to drop us a note at curiositynotjudgment.com or in any of the comment fields with the means by which you watch or listen to this. So thanks again, and we'll see you next week.
Take care.